take a major hit, you know. Yeah, they shipped that money to every taxpayer back early in the spring, and I wish they'd have held on to a little.
I ready they funded be gone too, yeah.
Yeah. Working without a raise day. I called him.
Time we don't have a quorum, so this is the vice chair.
Maybe call this meeting to order, 7 p.m. We have a quorum. We have Dr. Littrell, who's on a telephone line.
Just let the record reflect that Dr. Littrell is participating pursuant to a policy adopted by the Board of Supervisors on May 8th, 2017, allowing for no participation in the event of a health condition or a personal matter, and that the personal matter is to be recorded in the minutes of the public body. In this case, I think the personal matter is the outbreak of COVID-19 and Dr. Littrell's recent travels. If anyone has a correction, let me know.
All right, thank you. Robert, would you do the pledge and invocation, please?
Let's rise. Heavenly Father, we thank you for this opportunity together today. And Lord, we just ask that you watch over each and every one of us. Lord, these are trying times that we're facing, and we just ask that you pass your blessings down upon all of us. Give us patience. Give us healing touches. And just, Lord, just ask for your blessings on all of us. It's just been really tough here lately. Lord, we ask that you keep us in mind as we go through this meeting. Watch over us, lead, guide, and direct us. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. You don't have to.
You and Grace can both move back up there to the mic since we don't, that gives you the 6 foot or right distance.
Just a second here. You can sit. Use this chair. All right, next on the agenda is to ratify the declaration of local emergency. Should we read that or just?
Yes, sir, you need to read it for the record.
All right. Whereas in accordance with Virginia Code 44-146.21, that gives a local government the ability to declare a state of emergency to protect its citizens from current and potential emergencies. And whereas the SARS-CoV-2 has been declared a worldwide epidemic and is a novel disease that has resulted in death to our most vulnerable populations, such as the elderly and immune depressed. And whereas Carroll County at this time does not have a recorded positive case but understands the risk and severity of this situation and continues to implement plans and provides information for its citizens to help reduce the exposure and possibly lessen the impact on the community. And whereas Carroll County understands the economic impact that COVID-19 is causing, not only on the national stage, but the local economy and the risk to its businesses. And whereas United States of America, the Commonwealth of Virginia, have declared states of emergency to protect their citizens and to get information out as well as to move the proper resources to the affected areas. And whereas Carroll County reinforces the guidance from the federal government of reducing exposure by limiting the number of people in a group, using good hygiene and cleaning of high traffic areas, and social distancing to reduce the spread of COVID-19. And whereas Carroll County will continue to monitor the ever-changing situation, implement county plans, and provide information to the public to further mitigate the spread and comforts its citizens from the panic that could occur from such an emergency. Now therefore, it be hereby proclaimed, the Carroll County Board of Supervisors declares that Carroll County is under a state of emergency by the Director of Emergency Management, and the Emergency Operations Plan is now in effect on this 19th day of March, 2020. Do I have a motion?
I make a motion that we ratify the declaration of local emergency.
Have a motion, do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? I'll call for the vote. Philip?
Yes.
Tracy?
Yes.
Robbie?
Yes.
Dr. Littrell?
Yes.
I say yes. Motion carries. All right, next on the list is the payment of invoices. Do I have a motion to pay the invoices?
I make a motion we accept the invoices as presented and order them over to be for payment.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? All right, start with you, Tracy.
Yes.
Dr. Littrell?
Yes. I can hear Robbie really well, but I'm having a hard time hearing Joe.
All right, what I'll do in the future, I'll go to Robbie, and then after him, then you will know it'll be for you, okay? Yeah, he won't. All right, Philip?
Yes.
I say yes. All right, next on the agenda is minutes. Do I have a motion to accept the minutes?
I make a motion, we accept the minutes.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
All right, motion and a second. Any discussion? Start with you, Robbie.
Yes.
Dr. Littrell?
Yes.
Tracy?
Yes.
Philip?
Yes.
I say yes. All right, under new business, we had the consent calendar. Do I have a motion to accept the consent calendar?
I make a motion we accept the consent calendar as presented.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
I second it.
A motion and a second. Start with you, Robbie.
Yes.
Dr. Littrell?
Yes.
Tracy?
Yes.
Philip?
Yes.
I say yes. Next one is voting districts. Mr. Dalton, would you like to give us information on that?
Met with the electoral board. They have developed a plan of consolidating the voting districts down to centralized locations throughout the county. Unfortunately, I took the map is on the wall over there behind Philip. This plan eliminates a lot of voting locations and consolidates them to the points of central schools and areas in the county. The next election, of course, is close at hand, so at some point in the near future, we need to put this out and hold a public hearing and discuss it further.
How quick do we need to do this before the election? Does it need to be done?
The registrar has a lot. She has to bail out all the changes, which will be every person in the county, new location and precincts, which is a lot of work. It's already included in next year's budget. So the sooner the better. I would say let's do it in June. That gives her a couple of months get it done.
Well, I make a motion that we advertise for a public hearing on the voting districts on June the 8th.
All right, I have a motion to have a public hearing on the voting precincts, June 8th. Do I have a second?
I second it.
A motion and a second. Any discussion? Start with you, Robbie.
Yes.
Dr. Littrell?
Yes.
Tracy?
Yes.
Philip?
Yes.
I say yes. All right, the next one is on the UST removal.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, I would ask that we remove the underground tank removal until such time that we can deal with it later after the emergency's over with.
Do you need a motion to such or just,
If the chairman would just table it until some future date.
All right, I'll table this UST removal till May, first meeting in May. All right, we have the proposed 21 budget and tax rates. I guess that's, we're going to need to advertise a public hearing or have a motion to cover the public hearing.
Mr. Chairman, to meet the guidelines of going to twice-a-year taxation, the proposed tax rates that's shown in your package would be the high end. As everyone well knows, we can back off of those after the public hearing or before the adoption of the board. However, I would caution everybody with the loss of revenues such as motel tax, meals tax, and other items that it may be tough to make up all those revenues.
That's even with the recommended amount, correct?
The recommended amount was prior to the declaration of an emergency and the further directions of the governor and president.
Do we have someone who's willing to make a motion to either accept those, increase those? If we lose a quarter of the revenue, the latter part of this last quarter, that's going to hurt. We're already tight as it is. Do I have a recommendation or a motion?
so we need a motion for a public hearing, correct?
Yep.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, I'd like to go ahead and read the recommendations for the record. Real estate is 77 cents, which is a 7.5% increase. Personal property is $2.30, which is a 35-cent increase. Machinery tools is $2, which is a 10-cent increase. And the merchant's capital, which was frozen many years ago, would remain the same. I'd also like to advertise consider setting two rates for special classes of personal property to include airplanes with values greater than $1 million and computer equipment for data centers with total value over $10 million.
What's your pleasure, gentlemen?
I make a motion that we advertise for a public hearing. When do we need to have it, Soil?
The public hearing is, Mr. McCraw, the public hearing is proposed in the memo would be April the 13th of 2020.
But we have to put a
And that-
maximum rate, correct?
I did not understand, Mr. Chair.
You want to advertise your maximum tax rate because you can't go above what you advertise.
Can't go above, but you can't go lower, right?
Yes, sir.
I think we need to increase it over the 77 cents, just in case. Now, we don't have to do it to that rate, but anybody have a suggestion?
Has it done been put in the paper yet?
No, sir, Mr. Moore, we cannot, till y'all set the
Till we
public
do it,
hearing date
yeah,
and
okay.
look at those rates, we cannot do that.
I'll suggest we add 5 cents to it. If somebody wants to make a motion for 83 cents on the real estate, that doesn't mean we have to do it. That gives us some extra leeway.
5 cents gets you 82, or you want 83? So,
My math is not too good without a calculator, so 82. I'll make a motion that we advertise 82 on the real estate and keep the personal property at $2.30 and machinery and tools at $2. Merchants capital at 69 cents. Do I have a second?
I second it.
Motion and a second. Any discussion?
Just want everyone to understand that this is something we can go down, we can't go up. I know this is trying times on everyone and a lot of unknowns happening over the next month or so. Can we, are we, to where we can accommodate the public hearing on the 13th, April 13th?
We're working on that. Part of that answer is going to, thank you. On that, part of the answer is going to determine on the board's consideration later on whether an emergency ordinance to
Okay.
participate remotely is in order. I would recommend that we advertise for the April 13th, and if conditions on the ground significantly change, it could always be continued. But in order to keep on track with the current budget schedule, I think we do want to at least advertise for that April 13th.
Did I get the second?
Yeah, he give you your second.
Okay. That was a discussion. Any other discussion? I'll start with you, Robbie.
Yes.
Dr. Littrell?
I just want to reiterate that I can't hear all the discussion, but this is just a fairly public hearing to discuss the rates, but not the rates themselves. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Tom, we're having to set we're having to set a maximum line on the rates before we can set the public hearing, because we have to advertise the maximum that it can be. We can always lower it, but we can't go higher. And they set the high end of the real estate at 82 cents, and the personal property was 235 or 230.
230.
230, and machine and tool was
$2.
$2, just so you know.
Okay. I can hear you really well, Salil, and Joe, I can hear less well, but I'll vote yes for the public hearing.
All right, Tracy?
Yes.
Philip?
Yes.
I say yes. Next on the agenda is fiscal year 21 local choice renewal.
Mr. Chairman, we had our renewals submitted to us from Local Choice, the Anthem program. There's no change in the renewal. I would ask that y'all set up a committee of a board member of the Finance Committee of the board, a member from Social Service, the staff, and myself to go through that and make a recommendation.
All right, do I have a motion to set up that committee? I guess I could do it otherwise, but I'd like to hear everybody's comments about that. You want somebody from Social Services, somebody on the Finance Committee, and,
The Finance Committee is themselves.
all right, and Social Services, and who else?
And just a member of the staff, anybody you want to choose.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion that we establish a committee to look at the fiscal year 21 local choice renewal for our insurance. That committee could be composed of the Finance Committee, a member from Social Services, and a member from the staff.
All right, I have a motion, do I have a second?
I second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? Start with you, Robbie.
Yes.
Dr. Littrell,
Yes.
Tracy,
Yes.
Philip?
Yes.
I say yes. All right, so we have that committee. I think we just give it the county administrator authority to choose someone from the other departments. All right, EDA rules, property transfers. Not too long ago, I sent out a information to the board members about various things that policies and procedures that could be presented to the Economic Development Authority. There's about 20 items here. Has everyone had an opportunity to look at those? Anybody wish to make any recommendations or motion?
I'll make a motion that we accept the rules for the Economic Development Authority as presented by you, Mr. Hill.
All right, if I could, Robbie, I'd like to, how would I amend that motion? Because I need to read several things here.
I'll rescind my motion until you get done with what you're doing.
All right, I'll make a motion to require the EDA to follow all state purchasing laws and policies, to provide the Board of Supervisors a financial impact statement on all requests for financial aid, grants, and other financials as defined in 15.2-4907 Code of Virginia before proceeding with said project, to develop policies and procedures in all aspects of EDA work, update all leases and rentals according to 15.2-4911 Code of Virginia, to keep detailed minutes and suitable financial records according to 15.2-4904 Code of Virginia, provide the Board of Supervisors monthly detailed financial reports that include bank statements and check registers. Further require that all vacant lands be turned back over to the Board of Supervisors, and further require the EDA to follow the attached policies and procedures, which is about 20 of them here.
Now,
Should I?
Mr. Chairman, could I clarify?
Yes.
That's a motion to adopt a policy?
Yes, to adopt all those things under the Code of Virginia and these policies. Should I read those policies as well?
as submitted in the agenda packet?
No, it's what, I don't know where that was in the agenda packet or not. I don't think those were added in there. But I have copies of those.
I think you want to reference how they were distributed to the.
They were distributed,
Copy.
they were distributed, they were distributed to the county administrator and all board members. I think about a month ago.
You will submit a copy for the record.
Yes, and I have copies here
Okay.
for everybody. Essentially, what they are is, it's a primary goal of the economic development should be to safeguard Carroll County's investments by maximizing income from the sale, lease, rent of county properties, and ensure that no revenues are lost or that any agreement is in arrears. And the EDA must ensure county properties are sold at current market value. Leases and rentals shall be at a fair market value calculated through an appraisal process. And the EDA should adopt these policies to ensure a return on all county investments. And essentially, they just follow those things there.
Just to finally clarify, I interpret that as a motion, a statement of policy of the Carroll County Board of Supervisors, not an ordinance or anything more
Yes.
formal, but it is a motion to have a statement of policy.
That's correct. All right, I have that motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
A motion and a second. Any discussion?
Can I have a clarification? Maybe Robbie could tell me. Again, I could not hear very much of the discussion. It looks like, from what I'm seeing in the agenda, the bylaws are from December the 1st, 2013. Are we amending something or just confirming them?
There, about a month ago, Rex sent out a list of primary goals of the Economic Development Authority and sent it to everybody in an email. It had like 20 items on it.
So that's different than what's on my
different.
agenda item.
It is, sir. It's what's different. It's different than what's in that actual. That's the actual old bylaws that was listed for the EDA. Along with those 20 items, he's also listed a specific group of Virginia state codes that the EDA are to follow, to present to, of items that they have to present to the Board of Supervisors each month, how they are to conduct their business. And also, he's asking to have all the vacant property in the county returned, that the EDA has returned to the Board of Supervisors.
Okay, I was just looking at what was on the agenda and I couldn't hear what you all were saying, so sorry about having to repeat that.
This is, like we said, this is trying times, Tom. You're fine, sir. If we were 6 foot away, you have to be 6 foot away from each other. We could all sit on top of the phone. You could hear us better. But
Well, that might help.
see,
Any further discussion? Start with you, Robbie.
yes,
Dr. Littrell?
Yes.
Tracy?
Yes.
Philip?
Yes.
I say yes. Unclaimed body. This is essentially where we, go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, we had a instance where a body was unclaimed. There was a court order issued to the county under Code Section 321-309.2. It's ordered the sheriff accept and take possession of deceased and have it properly disposed of. This is a unique case because there was not the next of kin person, but there was somebody that was willing to take care of the cremation and a friend, but because of that, the court says they're not next of kin and didn't meet the requirements. So we had to accept the body.
This is the second one we've had in a couple months, is it not?
It is.
All right, do I have a motion?
Make a motion that we accept the fees for the unclaimed body,
Second.
amend and appropriate the $1,000. Sorry about that, Tom. Now you can second it.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? No discussion? Start with you, Robbie.
Yes.
Dr. Littrell?
Yes.
Tracy?
Yes.
Philip?
Yes.
I say yes. Declaration of Public Health Emergency. This is the order of the governor.
This is the governor's order, and the reason we put it in there to follow up with it. One of the things that I believe that we're lacking here, of course, everyone knows that we sent non-essential people home last week. They have to take their annual leave or sick leave until it's expired, or we call them back. We do not have a public information officer here. I would ask that the board allow me to call one of those people back. We have severely lacked in our ability for the county to keep the public informed over Facebook and the media of what actions they need to take. The federal government, the state have been doing a lot on notification. But I think we should have someone on staff that's all their job is till this is over, is to put out information and links to people of how to handle or report or what actions to take over the next period of time, and keep the public informed of what's happening here in our county through our website and Facebook and other accounts, even through the Nixle account, that we can give blast out there of what's going on, at least with the Board of Supervisors and county staff.
You need that in the form of a motion?
Yes, sir.
I make a motion that we provide Mr. Dalton with his needed ability to bring an employee back in to conduct and act as information officer, I guess would be what you're asking for.
All right, I have a motion. Do I have a second?
I second it.
Motion and a second. Any discussion?
I would like to add one thing to that list, if you could. Mr. Dalton is asking to put out a list of what offices are actually open and what facilities are open for the county. That would be greatly appreciated.
Just for everybody's knowledge, while everybody thinks the county offices are closed, they are not closed. If people will call in, they can come in by appointment, and we'll get them in the building and have our meetings, or doing it on the telephone. Talked to several people by telephone today over concerns they've had, and actually had a couple of people drop by last week, the Farm Bureau and some others. So the county is open for business, it's just not for walk-in business currently.
And I think that's the way it is in the Treasurer's office and the Commissioner of Revenue's office and the Circuit Court, General District Court.
All those officers are open. The court systems, the way I understand it, the attorneys, the defendants, you just can't, there's no spectators allowed. The commissioner and the treasurer are in their office, social services are in their office. There's numbers posted, and we need to get that information out to people, because if they have an emergency, get those numbers available to them. I think the perception may be that we're closed. That is not reality. If there is an emergency, we will take care of that all across the board.
I had a resident call me today about getting a building permit, can you still go get a permit and then go to the treasurer's office and pay for it?
We will, except we will do the building permit. We may hand you the papers to take and fill out. We'll calculate it. You write the check, give it to the building inspection personnel. We will make an appointment ourselves to go to the treasurer's office. That's how we're transacting business.
Okay.
They will meet us, and we have that appointment at 1 o'clock to take the money to the treasurer.
So we're back to the public information officer, correct? So we need a second, or did I get a second? All right, we got a second, so
And just for clarification, this is not any additional
Not a
money
hire.
or not an additional person. This is utilizing somebody on staff that's already getting paid to do this job.
all right. Start with you, Robbie.
Yes.
Dr. Littrell,
Yes.
Tracy,
Yes.
Philip?
Yes.
I say yes. Brings us down to the Department of Justice grant application.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, I signed a grant application for school security officer last week. I've placed this in the board package so that y'all can approve it and understand that that will be part of next year's budget if it is approved by the Department of Criminal Justice Services.
So that's for a total of $70,000 in local matches, $20,000.
Yes, sir.
We're close there, just below 20,000. Do I have a motion to approve that grant application?
I make a motion, we approve it.
I have a motion, do I have a second?
Second.
Motion and a second, any discussion? All right, start with you, Robbie.
Yes.
Dr. Littrell,
Yes.
Tracy,
Yes.
Philip?
Yes.
I say yes. All right, do we have any other new business?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, we all received an email from Maureen last week from Laurel Fork. Each one of you got a copy of that. She's very concerned that we push out notices from the Carroll County BOS about COVID-19 and be more prepared on how to deal with this issue, especially out in the rural parts of the county where some of the smaller stores are without bread and all kinds of things that we need to look into that. And also the possibility of some of the things of how to treat yourself and how we could use and develop a policy and means to use some of the local community centers to get items out to people that are needed, such as the Duxbury Community Center, the Laurel Fork Community Center, Lambsburg, and all the other centers out there, that we utilize those for people that probably are shut in and maybe don't have other resources out there currently, and don't know how to go about getting them. And I think all those are great ideas from a citizen. We just need to figure out how we can implement this.
Do I have a motion to, I guess we really need a, kind of a plan, maybe a motion to develop a plan to identify areas that we can
I
work
think
on?
we just, if you refer to the finance committee or set up another and let us work with social services and some of the community action people and see how this could be implemented. It's a great idea by a citizen of the county. It just will take some planning to get it done. The part about notification, you've already taken care of, but setting up, or maybe even working with churches. I know all of them have food banks and things, but we just need to be more proactive in how we reach out to these shut-ins and elderly and others in the communities.
I guess we can just refer that to the Finance Committee, if everybody's in agreement. That'll give us an opportunity, we can start working on the solutions to that. Because I've never thought about that, but there's probably things that we could collect and maybe have folks that deliver it, working through the churches or whatever, or various other organizations.
Since you have declared an emergency, there's means through EMS, state managed emergency management system that we could request resources, whether it be food or other items for those kind of people. We just need to develop a plan and change our emergency operation plan to incorporate things like this for the future. In the past, we've thought about emergencies such as heavy snows and earthquakes and things, but now we're at a different level of planning for some type of medical disease-oriented thing that actually just shuts everybody back to their home without moving.
Yeah, I think we need to get the EMS and probably the health department involved with this as well, I think. Go forward on that.
We'll probably get social services to give us a hand with, because
Yeah.
they have a lot of contact with the elderly too, so.
Yeah. At least it gives us somewhere where we can make contact and check with those folks. All right, old business, RFP auditing services.
Mr. Chairman, we advertised our current auditing contract expired with last year's audit. We requested proposals and sent those out. We only received one proposal back from Robinson Farmer Cox. I'd request that be reprimanded or sent over to the Finance Committee and let us negotiate a final version of a contract along with the county attorney.
Does that require a motion? Or can that just be an appointment?
Mr. Chairman, I think the chairman can just refer to and get that done. We'll bring, when we have a contract in hand, we'll bring the contract back to the full Board of Supervisors for approval.
I agree.
All right, I'll pass that off to the Finance Committee. And if anybody else has any ideas, recommendations, that you see what's the proposal in your packet. All right, committee appointments.
Mr. Chairman, last week, or week before, came to notice that the District 3 needed an alternate to Dr. Littrell. He was out of town, and obviously the committee, or the meeting got canceled, but I would ask that there be an alternate appointed in case he's out of town.
Do I have a recommendation from the board? Typically, is that a Board of Supervisors position?
It's typically a Board of Supervisors, it's just an alternate, they don't go all the time, just in case Dr. Littrell is not in town.
Maybe I better ask, do we have a volunteer?
I'll do it.
All right, we got a volunteer. Tracy?
Yep.
Do I have that in form of a motion from someone?
I make a motion that we accept Tracy Moore as a District 3 alternate.
Do I have a second?
I second it.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? Thank you for doing this. All right, I'll call for the vote. Robbie?
Yes.
Dr. Littrell?
Yes.
Tracy?
Yes.
Philip?
Yes.
I say yes. Enterprise zone incentives.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, I've included in your board package a copy of the enterprise zone incentives. For all of you, there's really two large enterprise zones in Carroll County, and it's a joint enterprise zones with Carroll, Grayson, and Galax. Those incentives provide, at least in our own industrial park over off of 77 and exit 14, a means that people, if they create so many jobs, a means of credits or incentives and towards their water, sewer, and building permit and zoning fees. However, as part of that, we also have included those for the Wildwood area, which we obviously get no taxation except for being a partner over there. I would ask that the board consider those and that we write a letter to the three participants and say that that could be a amendment to the zone that those three participants then provide those incentives back as a part of their incentive package for that portion of the enterprise zone, instead of Carroll burdening themselves with providing all the incentives for the other two localities.
So
That
do,
does, once we develop that, would require a notice and public hearing to change it.
I make a motion that we entertain the enterprise zone incentive change and let Mr. Dalton proceed as needed to get us to that point so we can have a public hearing on it.
I have a motion, do I have a second?
I second it.
Motion and a second, any discussion? I think this is way past time, we should have done this a long time ago. Any more discussion? All right, call for the vote, start with you, Robbie.
Yes.
Dr. Lettrell?
Yes.
Tracy?
Yes.
Philip?
Yes.
I say yes. All right, that brings us down to other. Is any other?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, before the county attorney gets the mic here, the school board presented us with a copy of their proposed budget for FY '21. Due to the meeting requirements of the governor and others that meetings be less than 10, I would request that the negotiations or discussions and budget presentation for the school board be limited to the finance committee and a staff person, and that way, and two members of the school board, their finance committee and their staff. That way we can stay under the 10 required by the governor's emergency order, and we can bring what we find and back to the full board.
All right, do I have a motion? Or can that just be an appointment?
I think it's a pleasure of the board. I'd like to hear if, from the others, maybe we want to have Tracy and Philip and Tom would like to be part of that discussion. The current proposal is a little bit over $1 million less than was presented last year to you. There's other discussions. That was a number that I gave them to shoot at a previous meeting. But there are other discussions within that budget, such as buses and other things that need to be addressed too. But it is the pleasure of the board of how you want to proceed with that.
Is there some way that to keep the numbers down that we could do like Dr. Littrell, just be on a conference call with it?
I will refer that.
Yeah.
If anytime you exceed two members of the governing body, whether that's by telephone or other means. It's
Okay.
going to be a meeting under Freedom of Information Act, so you
Okay.
have to go through these formalities.
So I guess that's the only option we really have right now with the state of emergency.
Well, I see it as something that we wouldn't make a final decision. We'd
yeah.
bring it back to the full
Absolutely.
board before anything was done.
Yeah,
But from what I heard from the county attorney, that we could put you on a conference call and let you dial in and listen to the whole discussion.
right.
We just have to call a meeting to order.
Yes, and you'd either have to have a quorum physically present then to call in, or pursuant to authority, to an ordinance that we are going to consider tonight. That would be a third option.
And that
Yep.
ordinance we were considering,
If,
An ordinance to provide for continuity of local government in the times of emergency, the ones we're facing right now.
if we just had the two finance boards and bring it back to full board, would that work?
Two finance members and then bring it back
Yeah,
to the board?
yeah,
Yes.
I think that would be fine with me that way.
typically, in the past, we've had two members from the school board and two members from the Board of Supervisors, and then finance person from each one, or the county administrator, or their chairman, or their school superintendent. So was that a form of a motion that you made? All right, so accept that as the motion. Do I have a second?
I second it.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? Start with you, Robbie.
Yes.
Dr. Littrell?
Yes.
Tracy?
Yes,
Philip?
Yes,
I say yes. Brings us down to our information packet, and then the next one will be closed session.
Could I ask a question before we go into that?
Yes.
I had a call this morning, and it's pertaining to the watershed project down there at the lake, and I don't know who to address it to. Who do I?
Unfortunately, it is, if it was about the four-wheelers and everybody running over the spillway, we've contacted the sheriff's department and started the investigation on that. They broke the gates down, and just a level of vandalism, I would call it, if that's where you're headed, Philip. But I guess right here is the right place to talk about it.
Vehicles crossing the dam said there wasn't supposed to be any going across it, and there had been spinning circles in the field, and four-wheeler activity was maybe suspicious, and so I didn't know where to address it.
You got the right place. We've contacted the police, and they're working on it as far as I know.
Thank you.
From my understanding, it's illegal to operate an ATV on someone else's property without written permission. So that's just to let folks know, you'd be charged with trespassing, we don't, and then operating it on a highway or one of our roads would also be a violation. So
Actually, the dam is one of those things that's considered essential. Spinning up the side of the dam and running over it, causing erosion, which caused the dam to failure, could actually lead to very serious charges on anybody doing that.
do I have a motion to go into closed session? Reference personnel and legal?
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion pursuant to Virginia Code Section 2.23711 that we convene a closed session for the discussion of personnel and legal counsel regarding specific legal matters or legal advice.
And to clarify, just for the record, the specific legal matter to be discussed would be the county's legal options to address the COVID-19.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
I second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? Start with you, Robbie.
Yes.
Dr. Littrell?
Yes.
Tracy?
Yes.
Philip?
Yes.
I say yes.
Put him on hold. Can you pick it up again?
Get him call in.
Tom, I'm gonna put you on hold just a second.
Okay.
Hey, Tom, I'm going to call you from the conference room, if that's okay. And put you on the speaker in there. Do you know what's the number? 8423. Okay, I'll call you in just a second. Thank you.
This is just crazy.
It is.
Do I have a motion to come back in from closed session?
Make a motion, we return to open session.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
I second it.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? All right, Robbie, I'll start with you.
Yes, we haven't got Tom in here yet.
Hello?
Dr. Littrell. you're
Yes,
back-
sir.
You're back on scene.
All right, sounds good.
Dr. Littrell, we've got a motion and a second to come back in from closed session. And I started with Robbie for his vote.
Yes.
Dr. Littrell?
Yes.
Tracy?
Yes.
Philip?
Yes.
I say yes. All right, do I have a certification? A motion.
Mr. Vice Chairman, whereas the Carroll County Board of Supervisors convened a closed session this date pursuant to an affirmative recorded vote, and on the motion to close the meeting in accordance with Virginia Freedom of Information Act, whereas Section 2.23711 of the Code of Virginia requires a certification by the Board of Supervisors that such closed session was conducted in conformity with Virginia law. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Carroll County Board of Supervisors hereby certifies that to the best of each member's knowledge, only public business matters lawfully exempted from open meeting requirements under the Virginia Freedom of Information Act were heard, discussed, or considered in the closed session to which this certification applies. And only such business matters as were identified in the motion by which the closed session was convened were heard, discussed, or considered in the meeting to which this certification applies.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? Let's start with you, Robbie.
Yes.
Dr. Littrell?
Are we voting on the motion or are we certifying? I'm sorry.
Certifying, sir.
I so certify.
Tracy?
I say certify.
Philip?
Certify.
So certified myself. That brings us to the adoption of an emergency ordinance. Mr. Durbin, would you speak to that first, or do I need to clarify?
I'll hold it. Thank you, Mr. Vice Chairman. Before we address the proposed emergency ordinance, there's one thing I want to clarify. I don't know if it was stated on the record at the beginning of the meeting that Dr. Littrell is participating, the remote location from which he's participating is his residence. And with that said, we can turn our attention to the emergency ordinance. Gentlemen, you have before you a proposed ordinance that is designed to address some of the problems that are posed by the unique nature of the disaster, the emergency that we find ourselves in. Unfortunately, the Virginia Freedom of Information Act, which governs all of your meetings, your management of public documents, and the conduct of public business, was never really designed with an outbreak of this nature in mind. It really envisioned things like blizzards, hurricanes, terrorist attacks, not something like what we're facing right now, where actually meeting together in person in groups to allow the public discourse, that very act is increasing the emergency, potentially. It's just something that was never accounted for under the Freedom of Information Act. The tools that FOIA does provide the governing body is a typical public meeting that we have twice a month up until this point, where you're gathered together in groups of 10, 30, 50, 100 or more. That is something that we've gotten the strongest guidance from the President of the United States, from the Governor of Virginia, from the CDC, from other healthcare experts, that that's to be avoided, at least during the pendency of this crisis. The other tools you have under the Freedom of Information Act are the ability to have a remote participation meeting, like what Dr. Littrell is taking advantage of right now. He's participating from a remote location. But the Code of Virginia only goes so far in that regard, because it still requires that a quorum, a majority of this board, be physically present here, and that typically the meeting would be open to the public. Again, that's problematic for the reasons we've discussed, that all the healthcare guidance that we're getting is not to gather in large groups. There is one provision in the Freedom of Information Act that provides for entirely electronic meetings by the Board of Supervisors or other public bodies, local public bodies, in times of declared emergency, when the governor has declared an emergency. The limitation to that, and that is a good and useful provision in the Code of Virginia, but unfortunately the limitation with that is that you may only discuss by an entirely electronic meeting measures that directly respond to the emergency that's been declared. So again, that doesn't help in taking care of the day-to-day measures that keep government going. That doesn't provide for the necessary meetings for this board to pay its regular bills. That doesn't provide for this board to meet to set a tax rate or to adopt a budget. It doesn't provide for the Public Service Authority, the EDA, the Planning Commission to hold meetings that might be very important to keep government going, but are not directly related to COVID-19. So what you have before you is an emergency ordinance based on Virginia Code Section 15.2-1413, which provides that notwithstanding any contrary provision of law, general or special, any locality may, by ordinance, provide a method to assure continuity in its government in the event of an enemy attack or other disaster. Such ordinance shall be limited in its effect to a period not exceeding 6 months after any such attack or disaster, and shall provide for a method for the resumption of normal governmental authority by the end of the 6-month period. Very important that this code provision is applicable notwithstanding any contrary provision of law, general or special. I feel like this is sufficient authority. Nothing is guaranteed, of course, but this is sufficient authority to adopt the ordinance before you, which would provide, among other things, that matters with a pending timeline, such as times to respond to requests for subdivision plat approvals, things like of that nature where it might not be able to be met within the statutory timelines because of the disaster. Those issues are continued by this ordinance until such time as they can be dealt with or during the pendency of the disaster, and no longer than 6 months, because that is the limit of our authority under any ordinance you adopt under 15.214.13. It would also authorize the county administrator to take actions that are objectively reasonable and necessary in the public health interest, to alter schedules, arrange for alternative procedures consistent with this ordinance, to provide programming, to pay bills, engage contractors, hire employees, set and manage a succession plan effective in the event of unavailability of staff, adjust administrative processes and procedures to address the disaster, and that all these be in keeping with the guidance from the U.S. Centers for Disease Control, the Virginia Department of Health, and consistent with state and local declarations of emergency. It would also provide that this board and other county boards, authorities, committees, commissions, and other public bodies may hold meetings through electronic communication means without a quorum of members physically present in a single location, in accordance with the provisions of Virginia Code Section 2.2-3708.2A3, including the public notice requirements, and at such a meeting held through electronic communication means may consider any item of business, not just responding to the emergency, but any item of business which the public body deems is essential to the continuity of government or is appropriate for the continuity of the work of the public body in question. For meetings held electronically, pursuant to Virginia Code Section 2.2-3708.2A1 and A2, it's more wide open because you're still staying within the requirements of the Freedom of Information Act. So if you deem it at some point that it is safe and appropriate to hold a remote participation meeting where a quorum is still physically present and some members of the public can come, it doesn't prevent you from doing that. And in that case, there's no limitation on what you can consider. But if you need to meet remotely, entirely remotely, electronically, this ordinance would provide you the authority and the ability to do that, but it would be my recommendation that the agenda be limited to those matters which are, if not essential to the continuity of government, something that's clearly necessary to keep county government functioning. That would be the limitation. This ordinance also provides for alternative procedures to make the best efforts that we can to provide for public participation to the best of our ability through electronic, through written, through telephonic, through any other means that we can come up with to ensure that the public can still participate in the meetings when they're held remotely, provided that it's consistent with protecting the public health and responding to the COVID disaster. It also provides that notices of meetings should be provided by email directly to those who have elected in writing to receive those notices, and that we post all notices on the county website and other means selected by the county administrator. Finally, well, I guess the last two provisions, as I mentioned before, this ordinance does provide that it is in effect for no longer than 6 months, but may be terminated sooner depending on what the facts on the ground are, whether the disaster is abated before the 6-month period. And finally, this ordinance does provide that it shall be effective upon adoption, and it further provides that if sufficient time was not available for the advertisement pursuant to Virginia Code Section 15.2-1427F, in this case, there was no ability to provide that notice, then the ordinance shall be in effect immediately as an emergency ordinance, and the county administrator is directed to advertise for a public hearing to be conducted in accordance with the provisions of this ordinance after advertisement under 15.2-1427F. So, in essence, we would be adopting this emergency ordinance to apply during the next 60 days until we can advertise in the paper, hold a public hearing in one of the ways that's described in this ordinance, and that may be by an electronic meeting with soliciting public comments through email, through U.S. mail, through telephonic means, and over the internet, to the extent that we can work out the technical aspects of streaming all of that. So that would be the public hearing to put this in effect until the balance of the 6 months expires. I believe that touches on the key points of this ordinance. I'm happy to discuss if the board has any questions, but it would be my recommendation to adopt it, and as a cautionary matter, so that you're prepared in the event it's necessary, and that would give you the freedom to determine when and if it's safe to have in-person meetings, when and if it's necessary to have remote only. And gentlemen, from the guidance that I've seen in the news, this crisis is not likely to be abated in the next few weeks, to say the least. So it is something that I think the board really should consider putting into effect.
Thank you. Do I have a motion to adopt the resolution?
Mr. Vice,
Mr. Vice Chairman, I make a motion to adopt the resolution that Mr. Durbin's presented to us.
I would just ask if you would amend that to just clarify that this is an emergency ordinance rather than a resolution.
Amend.
Just amend your motion to
Okay.
clarify that it's an emergency
Amend the
ordinance.
motion.
All right, so you're amending your motion to emergency ordinance, adopt emergency ordinance. All right. Do I have a second?
second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion, questions? All right, Robbie, I'll start with you.
Yes.
Dr. Littrell,
Yes.
Tracy,
Yes.
Philip?
Yes.
I say yes. Motion carried. Anything else that we need to discuss? So I guess we can,
I make a motion that we adjourn, Mr. Vice Chairman.
have a motion to adjourn. Do I have a second?
Second.
All right, motion and a second. Start with you, Robbie.
Yes.
Dr. Littrell,
Yes.
Tracy,
Yes.
Philip?
Yes.
I say yes. Meeting adjourned.